When I say the word bird, you most likely think of something like a common house finch or a pigeon. Just a silly animal that flies and shits on your car. Some of you may even think of something like a budgie or a cockatiel since they're common house pets, but nobody thinks of how oil bird chicks used to be melted down to make oil. We all know what birds are, but most of us probably don't know the darker side of birds. Well, that's what we're going to be looking into today. Birds, like most things, have a dark side, and that side may be darker than we think. So, without further ado, let's get into some of the darkest bird facts of all time. What if I told you there's a parasitic bird out there whose diet occasionally consists of the blood of other birds? That would be the vampire groundfinch. The vampire groundfinch, or as I'll call it, the VGF, is a small bird that is native to the Galapagos Islands. It is endemic to Wolf and Darwin Island. If you don't know what endemic means, it basically just means they're restricted to one place. Its conservation status is also threatened. Anyway, this bird is famous for its very disturbing and highly questionable diet. Although the VGF mainly feeds off of seeds and insects, it also feeds off the blood of other birds, like the blue-footed booby. There is a very clear reason as to why they do this, simply out of scarcity. On Darwin and Wolf Islands, stuff like insects and seeds can become scarce, and since the VGF is endemic, they kind of have no other choice. The way they feed off of birds like the Nazca and the blue-footed booby is simple. They peck at their skin with their sharp beaks until blood is drawn. Ouch. It's also important to note that blue-footed boobies don't typically resist against the VGF, so it's not like they're out hunting them or something. It has also been theorized that this behavior evolved from the pecking behavior that the VGF used to clean parasites from the plumage of the blue-footed booby. But wait, there's more. The VGF gets more terrifying when you realize that they go after baby blue-footed boobies and eggs too. Fun fact, the VGF is incapable of breaking through the eggs with its beak, so it rolls them around into rocks until they break. So, there's a literal vampire bird on the Galapagos Islands. That's kind of crazy. Birds are adorable, but some parts of the bird world can be pretty horrifying. Meet the oil bird, the bird named after how it used to be harvested for oil via being boiled down to oil. Let me explain. The oil bird, scientifically known as Statornis caripensis and locally known as the guaracho, is a large nocturnal bird. They are found in northern areas of South America and they are the only living species in 3 whole bird families. Their extinction status is of least concern. They are also the only nocturnal flying fruit-eating birds in the world since the kakapo is flightless. Anyway, the oil birds have a pretty disturbing history. Their name comes from the fact that in the past, chicks were captured and boiled down to make oil. They were also harvested for their fat. At first, this sounds absolutely insane, but it's actually very true. In fact, it's true that a lot of animals were hunted for their fat. In Moby Dick, the whale is literally hunted for its oil. But anyway, the oil from these birds were used for things like cooking, lighting, and even cosmetics like face cream. It is also important to note that it was mainly oil bird chicks who were melted down due to their higher fat content than adults and because they were an easier catch. The practice of melting oil birds doesn't have a definitive start date, but it is widely known that its practice continued up to the latter part of the 20th century, and today they are protected by law. It's pretty horrifying that up until the 1900s, we literally melted birds until they became oil. Birds are not known for being brutal killers, except maybe the cassowary, but this one is. The shrike is quite the bird. For starters, the shrike is not a singular bird, but rather a family of birds. A family of 34 birds to be complete. Shrikes are also found globally in habitats like grasslands, steppes, and shrublands. They are also known as butcher birds for reasons that will become obvious very soon. To best explain shrikes, let's just read this Reddit comment by Reddit user Luminary Clock.
So I'm by no means a professional, I just fucking love these birds. But shrikes turn into Vlad the Impaler for several reasons. First, it's a form of food storage. Shrikes often kill more than they can eat so they can secure what they donate for later. Chip Darmstadt, director of the North Branch Nature Center in Montpelier, Vermont, notes that he saw a shrike shred up a mouse and store the bits up in a tree for later. Second, shrikes have incredibly weak talons. They can't hold onto their prey and eat it at the same time. While their primary way of killing prey is snapping their spine or bashing their skulls with their beaks, shrikes often use their tiny weak legs to pick up prey then drop slash and impale it onto something sharp. After that, they can just fly down and finish the job if they have to. But more importantly, the prey can now be easily eaten by the shrike. Third, impaling poisonous prey helps them become edible. Shrikes have been observed impaling poisonous animals and then waiting 3 days for the poison to degrade before the shrike eats them. Fourth, loads of impaled prey can be used to attract a female. In fact, during mating season, the number of skewered bodies dramatically increases for males, and females tend to go toward males with more skewered bodies in their territory. Females still skewer bodies, but not as many as males do. Fifth is more of a fun fact, but shrikes have been shown to imitate the sounds of distressed birds in order to lure their prey. Can you imagine walking through a forest and hearing someone crying desperately for help? Then when you run over to see what's going on, the cries stop. It's dead quiet. Bam! Sharp talons out of nowhere and your neck gets snapped. I freaking love these birds.
So to recap, shrikes literally impale their prey on stuff like spikes and even attract mates with their impaled prey. So talk about some edgy birds. The hoopoe is a lovely bird. Even its call is beautiful. But as beautiful as the bird is, nothing can prepare you for how ugly the reality is for some hoopoes. But first, let's cover the basic facts about hoopoes. Hoopoes are native to vast areas across Africa, Asia, and Europe, though numbers are sadly declining in Europe. They live for about 10 years and mainly feed off of insects and larvae. It is also the national bird of Israel. I don't think birds would support genocide, but whatever. Anyway, the hoopoe has a dark side, as hoopoes engage in sibling cannibalism. Sibling cannibalism is a behavior where older, stronger chicks eat the younger and weaker siblings. You'd think the mother would have something to say about this, but nope. The mother actually facilitates this by pushing the youngest hatchlings to the older ones to serve as a food source. I'm not a bird, but that is pretty fucked up, dude. This all becomes much more common when food is scarce too. However, it is important to note that although cannibalism was originally deemed as unnatural in animals, this has changed and can be viewed across numerous other animal species. I don't have much to say about this, so I recommend reading the National Library of Medicine's article on this. I will link it below in the description. But anyway, that'll be it for this video. I obviously didn't cover much at all, so if you have any disturbing bird facts yourself, please drop them in the comments and I'll cover it in a future video. But as usual, thank you so much for watching up until this point, and until we cross paths again.